Read and applied.
Question number 11, Right Honourable Winston Peters.
Speaker, my question is to the Prime Minister and asked, why did he say in regard to the raid on the Fiji Democracy and Freedom movement, and I quote him, "I stand 100% by what I said before. Any actions that the SIS or the GCSB take, in my opinion, are legal."
Right Honourable Prime
Speaker,
Minister.
because I believe that to be the case, I do think it's important to repeat the full statement I gave at the time, which was that I said, quote, "I stand 100% by what I said before. Any actions that the SIS or GCSB take, in my opinion, are legal, with the exception of the case of Mr. .com."
There's more than that. Supplementary question.
Supplementary question, Right Honourable Winston
If
Peters.
that is true, why did the SIS officer leading the raid on Mr. Singh fail to identify herself and fail to produce a search warrant when requested, claiming that it was classified, both of which failings are a breach of Section 131 of the Search and Surveillance Act?
Right Honourable Prime Minister.
Well, Mr. Speaker, I'm not in a position to comment on that. I don't have those details, but I will say that I understand that there's been a radio report, at least I'm being advised, that Mr. Singh said he complained to the Inspector General. I'm advised that the NZSIS has no record of a formal complaint to the Inspector General of Intelligence and Security in relation to what the member is talking about. If Mr. Singh feels there's a problem, he should follow his legal rights and make a complaint to the Inspector General.
Point of order, Right Honourable.
Speaker, I seek to table a letter from the Ombudsman's office setting out Mr. Singh's right to have the matter referred on to the Inspector General by the Ombudsman's office, which he requested of them and which they did do.
Order. So it's a letter from the Ombudsman's office that the member is seeking to table. Is there any objection to that being tabled? There appears to be none. It can be tabled.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. My next supplementary question.
Supplementary question, Right Honourable Winston Peters.
My supplementary question is, how does he explain Colonel Mosese Tikotonga's texting Mr. Rajesh Singh, alerting him to the SIS raid already taking place in Mr. Singh's home, if the Fiji military did not receive advice in advance? And as Minister, how does he explain that?
Right Honourable Prime Minister.
Mr. Speaker, I don't have any details that the member is talking about. I stand by the statements I said earlier, which is, in my opinion, any actions.
Point of order, Right Honourable Winston Peters.
This is a most serious matter to do with the rights of people who live in this country legally. The Prime Minister was giving all sorts of answers up in Majura in Marshall Islands on this a week ago, and now he comes with no evidence whatsoever.
Order. Order. The member asked a question about how did the Prime Minister explain the texting to Mr. Singh, etc. The Prime Minister, halfway through that answer, and he may not have the details, and that's a legitimate answer, before the member's jumping to his feet claiming this is the most important matter. That's not a legitimate use of a point of order. If the member is unhappy with the answer, and if he has further supplementaries to use, he should so use them.
Point. Speaker, that would be the case if the Prime Minister could genuinely say about that, but up in the Marshall Islands just the other day, he was making all sorts of statements and slurs about the evidence before this House.
I've heard quite enough from the member. If he wants to stay to complete his question, I advise him to start asking supplementaries. If he's going to raise points of order which are not valid, and if he persists with that, I will have no choice but to ask the member to leave the chamber. Supplementary. Member wants to complete his answer.
Yeah, from good I should complete my answer, Mr. Speaker, which is I don't have details. I've never had details about text messages that the member speaks of. Secondly, I stand by the statement that, in my opinion, in all instances, the SIS and GCSB have acted legally with the exception of Mr. .com. And I repeat actually what I said in the Marshall Islands, which was if the member has some evidence and he wants and he believes there's been unlawful activity, then he should feel free to take that to the Inspector General or the police or bring it to me.
Supplementary question, Right Honourable Winston Peters.
Why would one go to the Inspector General when the Inspector General had this matter referred to him by no less a body than the Ombudsman's office, and second, has not even responded to the complainant for all these months since then, or come to his office when he's pushed on it in the House, he claims to have no knowledge whatsoever.
Right Honourable Prime Minister.
Mr Speaker, well, firstly, it won't get scarier because he raises his voice. I'm advised that the Officer of Inspector General of Intelligence and Security has no record of a complaint by anyone named Rajesh Singh. If Mr Singh wants to make a complaint, he's free to do so. And the letter that the member spoke of before, I'm guessing, but I'm pretty sure I'll be right, would have been laying out his rights for Mr Singh under the law to make a complaint to the Inspector if he wants to.
Point of order. Right Honourable Winston.
Mr Speaker, I tabled a document because that document specifically was an offer by the Ombudsman's Office to pass on Mr Singh's information for him if he so desired, which he did in a telephone call. Now, sir, we're being treated to more information from the Prime Minister, or disinformation, when it simply is not relevant to the information that the House needs by way of answer.
Well, I'm not sure what that point of order is either. Again, the member asked order.
Slowly. The Prime Minister said...
I will give the right honourable member...
The Prime Minister said... The Prime Minister's inference in two answers today is that the Inspector General's office was never advised of Mr Singh's complaint. Now, sir, that tabling of those documents was to prove that the document from Mr Singh by way of complaint went off to the Inspector General. So why is the Prime Minister repeating disinformation and obfuscating in his answers?
Because that's certainly not a point of order. The member needs to go back and look at the question that he asked. It was a question about why would anybody go to the Inspector General or to the Prime Minister's office, and you gave your reasons for doing so. The Prime Minister adequately addressed that. If the member has a further supplementary, he's welcome to use it. But to continue to relitigate an answer that's given by using a point of order will lead to disorder in this House. I will not warn that member again today. Supplementary question. Right Honourable Winston.
Supplementary question. Could I ask the Prime Minister, why should anybody in New Zealand follow the Prime Minister's advice and trust him, as we heard time after time with the GCSB debate, despite scores of text messages confirming the Fiji military government's clear prior knowledge of the SIS raid and associated actions, including the Government of New Zealand working closely with the government in Fiji, as the Prime Minister hinted in a One News item July 19, 2012.
Right Honourable Prime Minister.
Mr Speaker, I do not believe it is in national interest for me to go through all of the details of this particular case. But let me state once again that, in my opinion, any actions taken by the SIS or GCSB have always been lawful, with the one exception of Mr. .com. If anybody believes their actions are not lawful, they should follow their legal rights and take them to the police or the Inspector General, or they're welcome to bring them to me. The fact that they haven't taken those steps probably speaks volumes. But what I can say to the member is this: I know a lot more about this issue than he ever will, and he's wrong.
Order. 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 I haven't called the member yet. Order. A point of order. Right,
Perhaps, Mr Speaker, you can explain to me how the last part of that answer was remotely referenced, given your decision with respect to questions I've asked.
Order. And again, I invite the member to go back and look at the tone of the question he asked, and I thought he was given a very adequate answer. Question. Point of order, right honourable.
Speaker, I seek to table a number of documents. First of all, a complaint from Rajesh Singh dated 19th July to the Ombudsman's Office. Ombudsman's Office replied 20 July. A further letter 24 July from Rajesh Singh to the Ombudsman's Office. And a 24 July letter from the Ombudsman's Office back to him. We're offering to pass on the information to the Inspector General. In fact, 1, 2, 3, 4, paragraph.
Order. That's
6.
We don't need the.
And no, wait on. It's all here.
Order. Keep going.
It's all here. Plus a 16 texts which was sent on Colonel Te Koatanga's commander of the Land Forces Fiji's cell phone to Mr Rajesh Singh, and a further 41 texts also sent by the Commander of Fiji Forces on this matter, and further a receipt document from the SIS as to the computers and technologies, machinery they took away from Mr Singh at the time of this illegal raid.
Leavers sought to table a number of documents. If I summarise them quickly, correspondence between a complainant and the Ombudsman's office. Does anybody have any objection to that? Detailed information being tabled? There is none. It can be so tabled. Right. Question number 12, the Honourable Phil Goff.
Mr Speaker.